I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This is the time that we have for any presentation, any citizen comments. We're limiting it to 3 minutes. I've been very lax, and I've gotten some complaints about that. So unless, when we hit the 3-minute mark, I'm going to try to work out something with our city recorder, if she can clear her throat about 30 seconds. And because I generally am not watching the timer up here. I actually am listening to the other person. So I know you are too, but you multitask better than I do. So anybody that has any comments, please come forward and sign in. I've got one. You're limited to 3 minutes. Please state your city of residence, whether you live in Oregon City or not. And Phil Yates.
Thanks. My name is Phil Yates. I live in Oregon City, and I sent you folks an email about a month ago on an issue that's been bothering me a little bit. I sit on the Urban Renewal Commission and the Library Board, and on both bodies, on more than one occasion, on each body, I've been engaging in an email colloquy with other board members and have been told by staff, stop. You're violating the open meetings law. You shouldn't be making decisions by email except in open meetings. So I wrote you an email a month ago proposing to, one, explore the law to see if, in fact, what we've been told as board members is correct. Can we not make these communications? And if so, how can we move sort of in a direction of more open communication between board members and really between board members, citizens, and staff, which I think is the ultimate goal. And so I came up with a couple of ideas to open up the board meetings through the use of a almost free service that you can get from Yahoo or Google or many other places called listservs. And basically a listserv, for those of you who don't know, is people can sign up for basically a mailing list, and anybody who is a member who's allowed to post to that listserv can send that email out to the listserv, and it gets sent to hundreds, thousands, 10, how many people have signed up for the listserv. It's basically my proposal to you, the City Commission, to adopt an experiment, and I'd like to start at the Urban Renewal Commission because that's the one I sit on, of creating a listserv that the Urban Renewal Commission members could utilize amongst themselves between in-person meetings in a manner which is consistent with the law. And Ed wrote an email today to me, which I don't think you've seen yet, which I think basically says, if there's a will, there's a way, which is my suspicion all along, that we can do this. We just have to deal with a number of pretty thorny kind of practical issues, because a lot of times these listservs basically explode in animosity and bad blood when they're not moderated properly and when they're not the right kind of control. So there are some issues, and I'm really aware of them, but I'm also aware of the benefit of this. I speak from experience. In Wilsonville about 10 years ago, there was such a listserv that was participated in by the city manager, by all the Chamber of Commerce, government affairs people. It was a really wonderful community resource where the entire community got together and everybody read it. Everybody in Wilsonville read it. And then a big political issue came up, and the thing exploded. People started ranting and calling names, and there was anonymity, and it just basically broke. And the reason it broke was because the city staff stopped using it. This idea, if it was adopted by the city, really would depend on, and make it really work properly, would be to have the staff involved, have the board members involved, and then if it works, I would like to see the city kind of expanded into a separate kind of listserv which would include citizens. And again, it has to be moderated, and something like this, if you were to adopt it, it couldn't be moderated by the city because of First Amendment concerns. Anyway, I just want to put it on the city's agenda. It's up to you folks whether this goes forward. He thinks it can be done.
I'm just going to make a request quickly of I think our city recorders have been exploring some things, and normally we don't, comment after citizens comment, but since she has been exploring some things, I thought she might want to speak. Or not.
My main concerns are just legal concerns and also just the I don't know what that is, the logistics of and the staff time to manage it. Those are my biggest concerns, and
Okay.
I can give you more information as you wish.
No, give the city, also our city attorney, a moment if you wish it.
Well, you got an email back, I think, in response.
I didn't share your email.
Actually, I did send it
Okay.
to the commission, so the
So what he
commission-
got was what we got.
That's correct, yes, the same thing. I didn't say anything different. And that is that, except for some limited circumstances, a closed record in a quasi-judicial hearing, or something along those lines, you're pretty much free to communicate amongst commissioners. You can't circumvent the open meeting law and make decisions by going from one commissioner to another until you got a quorum. That's what happened in the Dundee cases. I know everybody knows here. But you're not prohibited from talking to each other. You're not prohibited from talking to staff. I do have some concerns, but they're logistical concerns over the issue of a listserv. And they're ones I think I've shared with staff, and I don't know if it's been passed along to you. You either have to be in or out of regulating these things. And if you regulate them, you run into First Amendment and Article 1, Section 8 Oregon Constitution issues. If you let it go and let everything go in, then all sorts of bad stuff can come in. And it's really up to you as to how you want to handle that. I don't know, quite frankly, whether an off-city moderator would solve the problem if it's a city-maintained list. So those are the things that are in my head. I'm trying to work with the city staff to get to something that you want and you can live with and doesn't get us into trouble.
My point is, let's just experiment with
Yeah.
it. I'd like to work through the kinks, if we could.
Thank you.
Thank you. William Gifford.
Mr. Mayor and City Commissioners, my name is William Gifford, and I live in Oregon City. And I'll surprise you tonight because I'm going to use a four-letter word, and I don't normally do that, but I will, because I'm embarrassed by the headlines of today's Oregonian. And the four-letter word is jobs. The Oregonian mentions that the Oregon is the fourth highest in the U.S. for what some call real unemployment rate. And I find that as an embarrassment that we are not creating jobs, more jobs. And let me begin with the Republican mantra that government can't create jobs. And I agree, government can't create jobs. Other than civil employees, they can't. But as leaders, as policymakers, not as micromanagers, the city has, I think the city council has the responsibility of creating an environment where jobs are of the utmost priority. And it embarrasses me that we are not doing more than we have been doing insofar as getting jobs. I know there are a few isolated places, such as the Safeway coming in, such as the union training thing. Tell him to be quiet over there, would you please?
I'll turn them down just a little bit.
Thanks. That there are a few isolated places where some jobs are coming in, but when we have an opportunity to create hundreds of jobs, I think that we need to be taking it more seriously, and I've heard some criticism that the jobs that were proposed for the Rivers Project were non-family wage jobs, and yet I recently heard a statistic that 350 to 400 of those jobs would be family wage jobs with benefits. And if that's the case, I'd say to throw away the 1,000 jobs, it would be entry-level jobs, it would be training jobs, it would be getting-by jobs that are still desperately needed. That's one thing to throw them away, but to throw away 350 to 400 family wage jobs, I think is inexcusable and embarrasses me.
I have nobody else listed. Therefore, we'll proceed on with the rest of the agenda. Anybody want to, two things, pull anything off of our consent agenda, and two, at this point, maybe propose some future agenda items. I see somebody's fingers poised.
Oh, no.
Okay. With that, we'll proceed into the consent agenda. Not the consent agenda, but the public hearings. We'll we'll have a report from staff. I'll do it right this time. We'll have the applicant speak. The public comment is restricted to specific items that were brought forward, and when we have the public comment, I will go ahead and defer to the city attorney. So, Peter, Walter.
Thank you, Mayor Neely, honorable commissioners. Pete Walter, associate planner. This is a continuation of the City Commission's review of AN 1101. This is a 6.5-acre annexation petition in the Park Place concept plan area. The City Commission had closed the public hearing, but left the record open for the addition of additional documents. Specifically, 2 of those are on your computers. One is from Christine Kaczynski. It includes 2 documents and a book. The documents that are excerpts on your computers are the governor's report on the cost of growth and an excerpt from the book by Eben Fodor, which deals with the same issue. The book itself is in the record. The city recorder has a copy of it here. It's called Better, Not Bigger. I think it's about 180 pages long. The annexation in question, we have 7 factors that the City Commission needs to consider and find a positive balance of those factors in order to make the decision to forward the annexation to the electors of Oregon City for a vote. And those factors are up on the screen. They include the need for adequacy of access to the site, conformity of the proposal with the city's comprehensive plan, adequacy and availability of public facilities and services to service the potential development, compliance with the applicable sections of the Oregon Revised Statute, Chapter 222, and Metro Code 3.09. Natural hazards identified by the city, such as wetlands, floodplains, and steep slopes. Any significant adverse effects on specially designated open space, scenic, historic, or natural resource areas by urbanization of the subject property at the time of annexation, and lack of any significant adverse effects on the economic, social, and physical environment of the community by the overall impact of the annexation. The Planning Commission reviewed this annexation and found the proposal to be positive in regards to these factors. So I won't spend any more time talking about the annexation. We do have the maps that were shown to you previously on the PowerPoint, including a blow-up of the area here, superimposed on the map from the Park Place concept plan, which is the conceptual street network that you see here, and some of the land use designations that were conceived of in the concept plan. And part of the discussion from the previous meeting had to do with access into the site. You can see that even on this concept plan, there were 3 street stubs shown into the area. And what this concept plan also shows, and which our Public Works Director is prepared to speak to tonight should you want to get more information, is a north-south collector road between Holcomb Boulevard and Redland Road, which is conceived of in the concept plan. That would not be constructed if the 6.5-acre annexation area is developed. However, is shown there for your information. I'll briefly go over some additional items which are in the record. We have an email from Mr. Tom Guile with respect to the annexation. We have, and that was sent on August 14th. We have a second email from Christine Kaczynski, which may or may not be placed into the record depending on what the Commission decides, whether it's new information or not. That is dated August 17th. It was sent directly to the Commission. And then, let's see, we have the applicant's rebuttal, which includes a summary of the report by the National Association of Home Builders as well as a response to the initial comments of Christine Kaczynski, and the applicant is prepared to provide that to you tonight. And I believe that is all of it. And if you have any questions about the record or the proposal before you, I'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions? I forgot what stage in the process we're supposed to talk about ex parte contacts.
I was going to make the usual cleansing remarks. I would ask the commission, you're aware of 2 emails that were referred to. Has any other commissioner received any pre-hearing or ex parte contact on this matter?
No.
All right,
I
everybody's not
I did
in
make
no.
a response to one of them. I
I
sent
saw
you a
that.
copy of the
That was in
response.
the email. As to the emails, you know that the record was left open specifically for the Kaczynski materials. They were submitted, and you have your choice on these 2 additional pieces. You may legally safely say that the record's been closed. You made that determination at the previous meeting and keep those materials out. That means you'd have to disregard, if you have read them, you'd have to disregard them. Alternatively, if you wish to take them in, out of fairness, you need to let the applicant respond. The applicant would have a right to ask for a continuance of the meeting in order to do so. That does put us in danger of making the election timeline. But those are the issues before you as to receipt of the emails.
Anything else from Peter at this point?
No.
Call forward where the applicant, if they wish to make some introductory comments before I open the public meeting. You were receipt of those 2 emails, I presume?
Yes, we were.
Okay.
My name is Ryan O'Brien. I'm a planning consultant representing the property owners in this case. And I have a fairly short presentation. I just wanted to bring up the fact that we had a second report from the National Home Builders Association. I think Jim Nocita, Commissioner Nocita, mentioned that the first report indicated what the revenues were, but it never indicated what the costs were for the local governments versus revenue. I didn't know the report existed. I found out it did, and you have a copy of it. And the report basically shows that residential development actually produces a surplus cash to local government. But this is all local governments. This would be Metro, this would be the county, this would be the school districts, including the cities. So I think it's a fairly comprehensive report. And I don't know if you've noticed at the end of the report there's about 10 different comments from different organizations. A lot of them are universities, and also one from Oregon. It's the Association of, I can't remember exactly what it was. It's affordable housing or something like that. Indicating it's very comprehensive reports and they're well documented. And the people that produce these are PhD economists, and they've done these all over the United States. So I feel pretty confident about it. The bottom line is, and if you read my report, is that the net surplus revenue to the local governments in the first year is $24,813. $24,813. And as it continues on, the actual cost to local governments is $5,736 per year, and the revenue generated is $8,408, which is a net surplus of $2,672. But it also indicates that the local systems development fees, that was in the original report, would be for residential permits and systems development fees would be $26,688. And I think Oregon City's higher than that. I think it's closer to $30,000. I don't know exactly. I think it depends on the housing types. But there's also other permits for construction and other types of things that are paid also. So I feel pretty confident that we've supplied information that shows that residential development is the engine, basically, that drives the economic base. And there's also some comments in here from the University of Massachusetts indicating that it's very clear that the residential development is what drives the commercial and industrial development in the employment sector and actually generates permanent employment. And I think the gentleman just before us talked about that, how important that is. The city could take the position, well, we want all the other cities in the county to produce all the housing, but Oregon City, we just want the commercial and industrial development. But it doesn't really quite work that way, because they'll go where that commercial development is located, where the housing is located. So I think it's important that the city take this, consider this piece of property. But I think really the bottom line is that this is, I know I missed, Commissioner Nocita, you mentioned before there's some policies in the comprehensive plan about doing a much overall look and a big picture look for annexations, and I think that's for our next one. We're going to be attempting annexations at a later date because there's 180 acres out there, I believe, on the north side.
More than that.
Well, the north side of Redland Road. South side of Redland Road, I think that's a long time off. A long bunch of different utilities. But all the rest of the property is a whole different set of circumstances. There you really do have to look at the big picture. You got the Holly Lane extension, you got sewers, you got to bring the sewer all the way down to Highway 213. There's major issues. This is just a little infill. It's just a little tiny site. It's infill. Allows us to get started and at least have some residential development out there. And we do know that we already have people identified that want to build houses here. They think it's an extremely attractive area. It's one of the nicest areas, I believe, in Oregon City. And if we can show that there's some velocity there, some housing construction, that'll help us justify our next annexation. Because that we have to show also to the financial institutions and to ourselves and to the builders that this is to be a successful area, and we want it to be successful. But we want it to be not of impact to the city. So I think we've demonstrated that. So I think with that, I'll conclude and leave it up with Ken.
Appreciate it, Ryan. Again, Kent Ziegler, Westland, and I agree with everything Ryan alluded to. It's the ripple effect that's so important in recognizing when businesses invest in a community, it's not only the money that they spend in hiring their employees, it's a ripple effect that occurs when those employees now have a paycheck, and they go ahead and invest in the other local businesses in the community, whether it's putting their deposits in the local bank, shopping at the new Safeway or the Fred Meyer, going out to eat in some of the restaurants, and then those people get a paycheck, and those people get a paycheck, and those people get a paycheck. And I agree with William Sifford's comment on the Oregonian article. The most important thing that any city, county, state, country should be focusing in on right now is how can we create jobs? How can we get our economic base up and going again? If you read that article, they said the true unemployment rate in Oregon is close to 20%. That's an astounding number. And I would tend to agree that that might even be low. Because there's not only people that are off the unemployment list, there are people that never got on the unemployment list because they're in real estate. They never show up. But more importantly, going back to that report, the other report that was mentioned by Ms. Kaczynski was an old report. I think it was dated 1998. The report that was generated by the Home Builder Association is, what, 2000?
Well, 2009.
2009, and was focused, I think the comment was from the commission earlier, well, let's focus on something that has to do with Portland. Well, this report was done for Portland. It was done for our backyard. We can't get any better than what you have in front of you right now. And that report showed where we get a surplus. And if you look at some of the items I've listed, reasons to vote yes, one of them is increases the city tax base with additional property taxes. That's number 2. Generates additional park SDCs for much-needed recreation area. That's just a sideline because we've all recognized that everybody's concerned that the kids have to play in the park, but yet the people in the area are paying property taxes for a park. But having that property tax revenue coming in from that increased tax base from those jobs that are created is so critical to Oregon City right now. It's critical to any city. And I just kind of alluded to probably the most important thing that I think any city needs to address, and that's public safety. And I don't care what economic report you want to look at, because we can generate a dozen reports, and someone else will generate a dozen reports, and they'll have their interpretation, we'll have our interpretation, and then you can decipher it all and see where it all fits. But in my opinion, the number one concern that any city has to their citizens is public safety. And if you disregard that, you have some issues, legal issues. And right now, you're dealing with a 70-year-old asbestos water line that people are drinking. Whether you like it or not, it's a city water line. The city put together a study to replace it because the city said, in city letterhead, as you are likely aware, the pump station is aging and becoming unreliable with water service interruptions occurring a few times a year. Okay, that's pretty black and white if you ask me. I'm not here to disagree with the city. It does do that. People have been without water for days at a time. You want to live in a third world country? Put that in the headlines of the paper. I want to read about that. City council votes for people to live in a third world country because you don't want an annexation to go through so the property owners can fix their water line. They're drinking out of a 70-year-old asbestos water line. Is that something that the city wants to be proud of when we have a solution to fix that on our expense? The city's own report said the budgetary cost of a packaged pump station, because there's no fire flow, that provides service flow is $380,000. The cost of a packaged pump station that provides service flow as well as fire flow is $470,000. It was assumed that either of these alternatives would require basic maintenance. Assuming one operator spends 4 hours per week maintaining the pump station, the operational cost for the alternative is approximately $12,500 a year. Okay, you're talking about $500,000, and I don't mean to beat a dead horse here, but we're talking about cities that are having fiscal issues. And this, if you don't approve this annexation, we're going to mandate you do this. We're going to mandate you give fire hydrants to these people. We're going to require that you replace that 70-year-old water or asbestos water line. And that's going to cause the citizens of Oregon City to spend $500,000. So the question is up to you. Do you want the citizens to pay that, or do you want the property owners to pay that? It's a simple yes or no. It's not a gray area. You either do it or you don't. If you don't, then we institute your 1990 urban management or urban Clackamas County, City of Oregon City Urban Growth Management Agreement that was dated on the 25th of October 1990. That was notarized by the city and the county. It says public sewer and water shall be provided to lands within the urban growth management boundary in the manner provided in the public facility plan. In the event the appropriate authority determines a health hazard exists within the unincorporated urban growth management boundary, needed services shall be provided to the health hazard areas by service districts if determined by the health division that annexation to and service by the city is not feasible. So if you think it's not feasible by voting no, just let us know, and we'll go to the state health department and form our own service district. Because we're not going to force these people to live this way any longer. And you have a choice. You have a choice tonight. Do you want them to have failing septic tanks? Do you want them to drink contaminated bad water? Do you want us to call the state health department and have them impose a health hazard in this area, just like they did on the other side of this area in Park Place? You're very familiar with what happened there, and we're going to do the same thing here if you don't allow us to fix your problem. We outline a solution. We give secondary emergency vehicle access, which doesn't exist.
Mr. Ziegler, I just wanted to make a little joke.
I'm sorry, I get carried away.
I'm Sicilian, but it sounds to me like you're making us an offer we can't refuse.
Well, I'm trying to point out the obvious. I just going, this offers so many positives. I just don't know how you can have a problem when we're trying to fix your situations for you at our cost. But, you're the ones that make that decision, not me. All I can point out is, the facts. And you can interpret the facts any way you choose, but, my role is to protect my property owners as neighbors and investment I have in the area. And as you all know, I've been working on this for a long time for various reasons, and I'm excited about the opportunity that's available to us in Park Place, and I want to see some dreams come true for a lot of people that live in that area. But the most important thing is, I'm tired of hearing about people saying, well, there really isn't a public safety hazard here. Well, yes, there is a very real public safety hazard. And if we don't address it, the state health department will. I can guarantee you. So I just put it on your table tonight to make that decision. I appreciate all your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask, before we come to Commissioner questions, I'm going to ask Nancy Krushauer if you want to respond to the items he brought forward, particularly dealing with the pump station and the pipes.
Well, the water system on Livesey Road does not meet today's urban design standards whatsoever, and the pressures are low. They're, I think we measured them recently about 40 psi, and we would prefer to have them at 60 or 80 psi. And when you get to the ends of Livesey, the end of Livesey Road, there are about, I think there's 4 or 5 parcels that are even a little bit higher. So we have our little booster pump station there, which is pretty. It's been used for a long time, and it does require service a couple times a year, which leaves people out of water. Now, we did a study on it. It's in our master plan to work on this area. And there are several alternatives. The most logical alternative will occur when we can bring water down from Holcomb Boulevard, from the Park Place area, which has fairly high pressures, fair amount of capacity, fair amount of storage up there with Barlow Crest Reservoir, and that would then connect down to Redland Road ultimately, and we'd have a loop system that would solve the basic problems on Livesey Road. There's also interim solutions where we could run a line between Holcomb down to Livesey just to make a loop overground. It'd be fairly inexpensive. We asked some of the property owners if they'd be interested in giving us temporary easements to do that. It gets fairly cumbersome because we don't know when things will develop. Will they develop in order? It gets very, so what we've decided to do in the interim is to, rather than spend $400,000 or $500,000 on a new pump station to serve 4 or 5 residents, seriously, in a city of 32,000, we've opted to do some interim improvements to the small pump station to replace some of the pumps, to replace the electrical, to make it as serviceable as possible for the interim period as we see what happens with the Park Place concept plan as it potentially annexes into the city.
And in terms of your evaluation of this proposal, to what degree is this going to improve the situation beyond our interim?
Well, I have not, see, this is just the annexation process.
Yes.
This is not the part where we get to look at what utilities, this is not a subdivision.
Right.
This is strictly criteria that's for annexation. So I have not seen details as to
So
what are the utilities going to look like.
What he's
et cetera.
talking about ultimately is decisions are going to have to be made at a later time.
Yeah, but the potential does start opening the door to start working on the water infrastructure.
Now, the Livesey situation, of course, Livesey itself, I don't think is within our urban boundaries, but we are getting water to some of our residents off of that pipe.
I think most of the people on Livesey Road are not in the city.
Right, but does the city gain access at all to that water?
City residents?
Yeah.
I don't think so. Not off of Livesey Road.
Okay.
Before it gets there, yes, but
Okay.
not off of Livesey Road.
Thank you. Go
It
ahead.
is a city water line, though.
It is city water, though. I mean, everybody shares the same water. It's just through different sections
It's
of the
now
city.
time for commissioners to ask any questions.
Is there a citizen comment allowed?
Well, yeah, on the record that was mentioned. We'll come to that. A couple of emails there. We'll have to make decisions, but right at the moment, the city commission gets to ask questions.
The only question I would have is for the additional items that were emailed to you, are we allowed to comment on any of those?
You have the opportunity of rebuttal afterwards.
Thank you.
Yes. If we open the public hearing, then the rebuttal can follow. Yes.
Randy, can I make one comment?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, this, I've looked at page 10 of the first report that we prepared, and this is a comment from the Center for Economic Development at the University of Massachusetts, and their quote is that these studies far exceed the school cost to property tax ratios. And the other one was from the Association of Oregon Community Development Organizations, and they concluded on this report that it is considered the most comprehensive and is considered an improvement on most previous models. I thought that was pretty good. And then the Boone County, Kentucky Planning Commission said that the Planning Commission used values from the impact model to quantify the increase in local income taxes, revenue, jobs, and overall local impacts to the metro area as a result of new housing construction. So there was about 10 different comments from different organizations throughout the United States. So I think it's a very good report. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we take citizens' comment, well, first questions from the commission, so you may want to stay here for a minute.
Actually, I don't have a question. I just wanted to let everyone know I was not here at the last meeting, but I have watched the entire meeting and have read through all the materials, so I am up to speed with the rest of the commission.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, now we're going to come to public comments. If I understand correctly, on our list here, the two items we'd have to make decisions on that may not fall into the purview are these last two emails, one from Tom Guile and another from Christine Kaczynski. Is that correct on that list?
That's my understanding.
Okay, and the other items are
in the record.
Are on the record. So I'm going to ask the commission at this point if we're going to take testimony derived from those two emails.
I don't have a problem with that.
Hearing no objections, well, those two emails and those two emails only.
Only?
Yes. That if you send in a subsequent email about something or anything else that will not be part of the discussion, only these items that we have listed before us. With that,
Mr. Mayor, one other thing, if there's new testimony also, that would not be allowed on anything that's not on the record already.
Right. That's sort of what I meant to say, but it didn't come out nicely. Anyway, with that, we'll open the public hearing. And let's see what I've got. Mr. Guile, are you going to confine your remarks to your emails?
Kind of, sort of.
Well, keep in mind what he said.
I understand. That email was exactly what I said last week, so it's nothing new. It was what I said. I just was sitting back there, and I thought James Hunt was in the audience, the way you guys were getting threatened up here. A lot of threats come in your direction. If you don't behave and do what Mr. Ziegler wants, he's going to call the state on you. All I really wanted to say originally was that what I sent to you in an email was exactly what I said last time. It just doesn't seem to resonate with anybody that every time Mr. Ziegler's brought up the fact that he's going to do this road up there and there's a breakaway, if there's a flood on Redland, how is an emergency vehicle going to get through?
From Holcomb.
And they won't. And so what good is a breakaway in the first place? That's number one. And number two, as I pointed out, I keep thinking, doesn't anyone understand? Kent said something about number one concern here is public safety. That's what we're concerned about in Trailview when we meet, is safety of all that construction coming through, emergency vehicles, because there's only one way down, and that's Trailview, down into that area. There's other streets, but you'd have to wind around to get to them. And I know that the decision tonight will probably go in the favor of putting it on the ballot and letting the decisions be the citizens again, just like last time when they turned it down twice. But the point is that this is kind of almost a ruse to keep talking about the individuals down there who are 70. They're not even citizens of Oregon City, and they moved there knowing those things, yet I keep hearing, and we all do, about the safety for them and that you guys are going to get sued, or the city, if they don't get their stuff. So that was mainly it. I'm rambling right now because I sent you an email about this, and when I heard you guys under the gun tonight being threatened, I just thought, wow, this is like some of the past city council meetings I've heard when other people have threatened you.
No, that's why we get paid the big bucks, huh?
Do you? Okay. So at any rate,
Mayor gets the most.
consider public safety also for our citizens. There's got to be another route for building roads up there, for doing this. If it's going to go on the ballot, there has to be another way other than through where our children, not mine, but all the children who play there, because there is no park. They do play in their front yards and the streets, and their school buses come through there. To have a lot of heavy equipment come through at that time is going to be dangerous to them. So I'm concerned with public safety, and so is all of Trailview's residents. Thanks. I hope you don't get any more threats tonight.
I have no other people signing up for public comment. Then, you want a rebuttal on the last item?
We're allowed to.
Oh, yes, you're entitled to.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it. Am I in the right spot? Okay. First of all, I have a lot of respect for Tom Guile. I've gotten to know Tom quite a bit over the years because he is a neighbor in Trailview, and I enjoy all his comments. So let's just focus in right on what he has to say. First of all, he talks about fixing Redland Road, and the fact that the breakaway gate, that would be the emergency vehicle access off of Livesey Road, if you can't get access to it, what good is it? And I brought along some pictures, and last time I know I didn't have a mic, so you might want to help me out with this. That'll work. Oh, I'll grab somebody else's mic. Great, thanks, Nancy. And I'm going to try to stand here where everybody can see what we're alluding to. And Tom makes some very good comments, but the reality of the situation is, as I shared in the public record when we met 2 weeks ago, is the reason why the intersection of Livesey and Redland Road floods so often, and the intersection of Redland, Holcomb, and Abernathy doesn't flood, except, as Kathy and I both agreed, in 1996, everywhere got inundated, is here's Redland Road, here's Cami Kehoe's house, which was inaccessible during a recent flood a few years ago. Here's Redland Road, and here's the Abernathy. What we run into here is the fact that the Abernathy is almost immediately adjacent to Redland Road, where the intersection of Livesey and Redland come together. Well, just simple natural gravity. Water will go to the path of least resistance. And when the water or the stream is right next to the road and only has to go up a small area to go ahead and inundate that pavement, you've got a major problem, because it's flat there. It's very flat. The picture illustrates how flat it is. Now, compare that to the intersection of Abernathy, Holcomb, and Redland. The Abernathy is a lot further distance away. It's at a higher elevation, so it doesn't flood. So the purpose behind the emergency vehicle secondary access isn't so much the breakaway gates, but it's the ability for people that live on Livesey now that deal with this problem, which is obvious to see from the naked eye. We can't change that. But they can now access their property when this floods, which it does periodically, coming through a higher elevation of Holcomb in through our improved first phase of Park Place, and then go ahead and get to their homes through our secondary access. That's the reason behind the emergency vehicle access. It has nothing to do with the Redland Road. Obviously, we all want to fix Redland Road. We all know that. And one of the reasons why the city increased their SDCs, it included the expansion areas in that, in their budgetary amounts as to what they needed to charge for new building permits to cover the cost of improving Redland Road. Well, we're not there yet. We're in a down economy. We're not generating the SDCs like we used to in the number of building permits. So the city isn't in a position right now to come in there and spend that kind of money. So we have to be creative and try to find a way, well, how can we address the existing problem that is here today in the most cost-efficient manner? Well, the property owners are the ones that are stepping up to do that. But by allowing us to go forward with our first phase, we extend all the public improvements that much closer to that secondary access. That's what we're talking about. Okay?
So the access is via Holcomb Road.
Yes.
Yes. Yep. Well, yes, well, that's your
That's not
alternative,
that
yeah.
far.
That's an alternative.
Yeah, to me, it's people. It's not that much further to go Holcomb, go down Redland. Really, it is not that much further.
The point is, we had testimony the last time we had this for annexation of people that lived in Livesey, on Livesey Road, that were in the county, that were in fact cut off, and they didn't have any access at all.
No, for days.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to fix that. That's the reasoning behind our proposals. What can we do now, today? In order to make this this fix of Redland Road, you're going to deal with floodway and floodplain issues. You're going to have Fish and Wildlife, Corps of Engineers, Division of State Lands, county. You're going to have numerous agencies involved. You may build a bridge. We don't know yet, so that those floodwaters are not impeded to be able to go ahead and pass through, again, their natural course. I think we want to undertake that, but we're not there yet. But what can we do today? Again, I respect Tom's comments. I think they're valid, and we do want to improve Redland Road, but we need to do it in an incremental process that the city can afford. I think that, as far as utilizing the public roads, I've done subdivisions for 30 years, and every time I've done a subdivision, our framers, our sheetrockers, everybody used public roads. So unless Oregon City wants to be the first city in the whole country to not allow subcontractors to drive on public roads, I think you have to allow them to use public roads.
I feel obligated for the record in terms of everybody wants to fix Redland Road, that 10 or 12 years ago, I voted for Redland Road and up Holly Lane not to be included in the urban growth boundary,
Yeah.
for the record. However, since it's there, then yeah, I think we ought better do something about Redland Road.
I'm all for it. I support it 100%. But we crawl before we walk before we run. And we're just trying to start crawling right now. And I thank you very much.
As far as my testimony, I think he's covered everything, except one thing I wanted to mention is when Trailview was built, they had to go through public roads to get Trailview, so, I think it's reasonable for us to be able to do that, too.
I will precede your coming up here by saying the public hearing was closed, and then now you've given your rebuttal. But anyway. Comments or discussion? Well, I'll start. I was looking at, and I did not read thoroughly the document that Christine Kaczynski's put forward, but I did look at the highlighted pieces that she had there in terms of costs and in terms of cost of infrastructure. And I just jotted down some notes. Many of the infrastructural areas, in fact, have or are being dealt with. The jug handle project is going to create capacity in that area. There's been major improvements on the sewer system that have increased the capacity well beyond what's currently being served. As far as I know, the water treatment capacity is sufficient to cover future developments in Oregon City. And in terms of schools, although I understand Park Place is now being used as a charter school, it's still a building that is available should there be expansion of the student population. Our student population, even though our population has been growing, the number of children per household has been dropping, and really we're kind of flat, as I understand it, in the growth in the student population, even with the residential growth. So those are things that I particularly jotted down. Infrastructural changes that are currently being dealt with that can deal with this particular piece of growth. So that's the comments I jotted down. Anybody else? Commissioner Nocita.
Okay. I have some code provisions I asked Nancy to copy for me, and I'm going to be relying on Pete and Ed for my inquiry here. So I don't know if everybody needs this, but I'd like to get copied down to Pete.
Just gotta talk louder.
Sure.
It's hard to hear when you're on the speakerphone.
Oh,
Yeah.
she's got one.
So it's the paired pages.
Thank you.
And I will ask to direct the commission and anybody else who has the document. The staff report, page 6 of the staff report. I want to give some background on what I want to address in this discussion. What I kind of see our role as a commission is, because we have voter annexations, I think an important part of our role is to help the citizens be informed with adequate information in order for them to deliberate and make their decision when they vote on annexations like this. And I'm going to read from our annexation code. This is Title 14, Annexations, and the first section on purpose. Section 1404.010A says, with respect to annexations, the procedures and standards established in this chapter are required for review of proposed annexations in order to, 1, provide adequate public information and sufficient time for public review before an annexation election. 2, maximize citizen involvement in the annexation review process. 3, establish a system for measuring the physical, environmental, fiscal, and related social effects of proposed annexations, and 4, ensure adequate time for staff review. And then there's a section on procedures which include an advertisement in a local newspaper, and where the advertisement's supposed to allow voters, where the information they can get to review the documentation, if they so choose to go that far in reviewing the information on file, to make their decision. And what I'm one of the things that I'm perceiving in reading this application is, when you have an annexation, whether the information you're supposed to be able to review is based on the property as it is now, or the property as it would be at full build-out. And when I see the purpose statement, establish a system for measuring the physical, environmental, fiscal, and related and social effects of proposed annexations, I'm of the opinion that what the citizens want to know is, what are the impacts of this when it's going to be developed, and that they want that information at the time of the annexation in order to judge whether they want to vote for the annexation or not vote for the annexation. And there's some things in this application and staff report that I find kind of like straddle the fence on that, because some of the analysis does seem to be for, this development at full build-out. And other parts of the analysis just kind of like give a response to the code provisions by saying, well, it's empty. It's a vacant piece of land, so it's not going to have any effect. And I would specifically draw people's attention to page 18, item number 7. The standard is, number 7, lack of any significant adverse effects on the economic, social, and physical environment of the community by the overall impact of annexation. And the first sentence reads, annexation of the vacant property will have virtually no effect on the economic, social, and physical environment of the community. And I'm not sure that, based on a response like that, the voters really have the ability to analyze how this annexation is going to affect them or the city. So that's a general comment, but I want to get to a specific comment, and it's again on page 6 of the staff report, and it deals with the transportation planning rule. the text at the transportation planning rule heading says, when the Park Place plan was adopted, formal compliance with the Oregon Department of Transportation's planning rule was deferred until the time of annexation and zoning of the property. And then they give an excerpt from the concept plan, the last sentence, which reads, formal compliance with OAR, yada, yada, will be addressed at the time of annexation and zoning of parcels within the concept plan area. So the TPR was not addressed during the concept plan. It was deferred. And it seems that under this proposal, compliance with the TPR is further deferred past this annexation to the time of a zone change. And that's at the point where a traffic impact analysis is required. And I checked some of these code provisions, and I have an issue with that interpretation, and I want to see if we can sort this out, because I think it's significant. Next sentence reads, per OMC 17.68025A, annexed properties receive a default city zoning designation as a single process. This procedure has historically served the city well for annexing county land, FU10, and low-density residential, since the default zoning has typically been to the comparably low-density residential zoning R10, with subsequent upzoning to a higher density following annexation initiated by the developer. Since the applicant has not completed the required traffic impact analysis study for any future project that indicates compliance with the TPR, the applicant has the option to, 1, annex to the city now and maintain existing county zoning designation, or 2, address the TPR for the default zoning R5 for the subject property. I'm not seeing, reading the zoning ordinance, such an option. And I'll start by directing everybody to what I've passed out, which the code, that this first sentence of that paragraph is this chart. 1768.025, zoning changes for land annexed into the city. A, notwithstanding any other section of this chapter, when property is annexed into the city from the city-county dual interest area, with any of the following comprehend plan designations, the property shall be rezoned upon annexation to the corresponding city zoning designations as follows. All right, so there's two. The staff report talks about a choice between R5, the medium density residential zone, and then maintaining the existing FU10 county zoning. I don't see where it's possible to maintain the FU10 zoning. And for that, I'll direct everybody's attention to the second piece of paper I passed out, 1706.010, general provisions, which if you look through it, and it lists all the zoning classifications in the city, it does not include a city FU10 designation.
Don't have to. It's the default county provision, which doesn't change merely by the fact of annexation. You don't do an automatic. You have the county FU10 remain, even though that's not a city zone. There's no intervening zone that occurs until the city changes the zone. It stays at the FU10.
Okay, but go back to 1768.025.
Yep. 1750.
1768.025. A, above the table.
Okay, sorry. Yep.
Notwithstanding of any other section of this chapter, when property is annexed to the city from the city-county dual interest area, the property shall be rezoned upon annexation to the corresponding city designation. So it seems to indicate that upon annexation, the rezoning is automatic to the applicable city zoning. And in the concept plan, that plan has already had given this property a comp plan designation of R5, which would be medium. Would be the comp plan designation in the Park Place concept plan is medium density residential. So the default zoning, it seems, under this code provision would be R5, not FU10.
Staff came to a different conclusion. Perhaps we might ask staff what its rationale was.
I believe the rationale was that under Chapter 14 being a discretionary annexation decision, if the applicant requested disconnection of the annexation proposal from a rezoning proposal, that the City Commission could operate under that procedure. And in fact, we have, I think we processed the previous annexation under that understanding as well, even though it went to the
Nancy,
voters.
can you get me in the queue up there, please?
Yes.
Yeah. So, annexation and zoning has typically been a dual process throughout the state, but I would defer to the city attorney on whether you do have that discretion to disconnect.
Let's have Tony do his response first.
Yep.
Okay, Tony.
All right. Thank you. Evening, everybody. So we're trying to hear. I think we're getting most of the conversation. I think this has to do with the ability of the city to put a condition of approval on the applicant to defer TPR compliance. I think one of the difficulties that we deal with is that because of the voter annexation component of the charter, how much upfront work is needed to be demonstrated as part of an annexation. The annexation itself does not approve any development. It is a two-step process. So we rely on, in this case, we have the Park Place concept plan that was adopted. It looked at the long-term transportation and infrastructure impacts associated with the Park Place concept plan. While I agree, it's very, very difficult, though, to ask an applicant and to review a hypothetical, and that's all this would be. If we said, okay, it's 6.5 acres, you can theoretically get 10 units per acre, and you are required now to do that, all that analysis up front, knowing that you need to still go to the voters. So we felt it was appropriate to annex the property in. It'll stay at FU10 zoning, and then you need to demonstrate your transportation compliance at the time of zone change. If they can't demonstrate it, the zone change is denied and they remain FU10 until the transportation system is fixed, or they come up with mitigation to address that. The voter annexation component of our charter makes it very difficult to process these, because it's not a situation where you're requesting annexation, requesting zone change, and requesting an approved subdivision at the same time. We have to separate these processes at this point.
Okay. But if that's the case, that should be clear in the text of the zoning ordinance. And I still read 176025 as not discretionary. It says the property shall be rezoned upon annexation to the corresponding city designation as follows. And to me, that's quite clear that the zoning designation upon annexation would be medium density residential, default zone R5, based on the medium density residential comp plan designation in the Park Place concept plan.
My understanding is that, sorry, Jim, I wasn't sure if I cut you off there.
No, that's all right. No, I was done.
Well, my understanding with working with the city attorney was that we have the ability to condition TPR compliance and the zone change until a later date. And that's why we've done that.
Mr. Sullivan?
I'm thinking, the ordinance on annexation should then reflect that carrying over, because ordinarily, under the section that Commissioner Nocita raised, it's done automatically, and unless there's something to set it aside, you can't let it go through without TPR compliance. However, you could, in the ordinance approving the annexation, continue that and not allow for any permits to issue until TPR compliance is shown. In other words, to offset the automatic nature of the rezoning. But it seems to me that a better way for most applicants to handle this would be to do the TPR on annexation. This is a small annexation. It doesn't have all that much change, but it seems to me that the TPR does apply at this level. That unless you do something to blunt its effect in the annexation ordinance itself, that you may have a TPR compliance problem.
That's what that was my interpretation on reading this. And so I think that the TPR does apply at the annexation stage. And I think we have to...
I don't think it ordinarily does, but I think the way the city has approached this is to say that it occurs on annexation and rezoning. If ordinarily annexation wouldn't have an effect, but we've said it in our documents.
And on top of that, I think, when you read it in the context of the purpose statement, it seems to me that the ordinance is written to provide the public, in advance of an annexation vote, as much information as the ordinance requires, so they can make a judicious decision. I don't know how many people are going to give a rat's about a transportation impact analysis.
And I'm not as concerned about that. And the reason for that is that it's a purpose clause. And it's supposed to lend interpretation, but it's not by in and of itself a requirement.
Okay. Well, I'm not prepared to approve this and send it to the voters out of compliance with the zoning ordinance.
But isn't that a city zoning issue? Why would we hold up the applicant if it's our issue? If it's something, a loophole, so to speak?
I don't think it's a loophole. I think it's plain black and white text of the ordinance that the TPR analysis is required at the time of annexation.
So is there any way that we can move this forward with a clause in there?
Yes, and it's not without risk, but it's possible to move it forward, send it to the voters, and say, in the
event it's
in the materials that you send to the voters, that if TPR compliance is not had, then the rezoning will not occur, and then put that into the ordinance. You have another step, one, if the voters approve this, and that is to adopt the annexation ordinance.
Okay.
And you could at that time say that the rezoning won't be effective until TPR compliance has occurred.
But that takes the TPR as an information base for the voters out of the picture.
Yes, it does, and I think you need to deal with that as a policy.
That's the policy judgment that we have to make as
That's
a
correct.
commission.
That's correct.
And I'm not willing to vote for this without it.
I know we're not allowed to make comment, and I apologize. But can we offer to make some statement?
Yeah, well, I don't see objections coming, so yes, come forward.
No.
Go ahead.
Come forward. Okay. I understand we're dealing with a technicality here. And obviously, we have a whole list of reasons why we want to go forward with this annexation to try to resolve some public safety hazards that exist. And I'm totally respectful of your position. It seems to me like on the last annexation request that we put forward, we dealt with this also, and we put it to a vote of the people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the world didn't come crashing down on us. We survived that. I think there's a way to go ahead and have us put a condition that we will not seek any building permits. We will not seek any entitlements. You tell us what our restrictions are. The annexation is just one step in a long, long process.
Yeah.
It costs us thousands and thousands of dollars every time we put an application request in front of you. Believe me, we don't have thousands and thousands of dollars anymore. We're in a very tight, difficult economy, all of us. I'm paying carrying costs on this land every month. And if you want the whole Park Place concept plan to just fall apart on a technicality, you could do it tonight. But my thought is there's a way to address this in a way that we don't go forward with granting any permits, any entitlements. Nothing changes until we can address your technicality. And I'm willing to agree, as long as it's reasonable, to whatever you propose.
Mr. Sullivan, what do you think?
I can craft some language. Again, I will tell you that I'm not going to second-guess your policy judgment as to whether or not there are 3 votes to put this forward. That's your call. But if you want to go forward, I can prepare some language that will allow it to go forward, again, not without risk, but to go to the voters.
Well, and I think the voters are pretty smart, and they're pretty savvy, and they'll either vote yes or no. I mean, they have to approve it, whether we go to the next step or not. So we don't have the answer until we get to the first step, correct?
We can get the answer by waiting until we have a TPR compliant traffic impact analysis.
What if that takes 10 years?
If I may, just direct your attention to page 22 of the Planning Commission staff report, which is the City Commission conclusions, which would be included as an exhibit to the ordinance. Number 11 states that the City Commission recognizes that the applicant is only requesting an annexation at this time. Any zone change request, which will address compliance with the Oregon statewide transportation planning rule, OAR 660, etc., will come at a later date if the annexation is successful. I don't know if that resolves the issue, if it is included in the ordinance, but I just wanted to point that out.
I put myself in the queue, so I get to speak. I understand the issue with the language. I think I do. Here's the problem I think anybody coming forward in annexation that has to go through the voters are going to face. If they have to do major studies before the annexation, they're going to have to make that additional investment. It'll be costly. And they're at the risk of having it turned down by the voters and lose that investment. And I'm concerned about the language we have here. I don't particularly care for it now that you pointed it out to us. And I think we'll probably have nobody requesting annexations if they in fact have to make major investments into what the transportation impacts are before they even have a chance to know whether it's going to be voted up or down by the voters.
I agree.
I know you agree. But
Well, it's a true statement.
I'm trying to get that out to my fellow commissioners.
Yeah, no, it's a true statement.
So again, we're going on the record that as long as it's reasonable language that we can all live with, as we did on the last annexation request, we request that you go forward.
It's in the Commission's hands, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I guess my question is, we're coming up to a deadline, and the deadline is when?
This is effectively it, because you could, if there's no, you couldn't even do it at the next meeting. You have to have it in for the September.
That's correct. You need a challenge time period.
Have James Nacita?
Yeah. I'm not in favor of moving this forward in the face of the clear text of the code. I don't think. I looked at the proposed commission findings, and I don't agree with a lot of those findings. Particularly, I have a problem with the police funding issue. We are still not at the national standard for police. When I ran, I was educated by Commissioner Smith and others that one of the problems that created our police issue was that we grew so fast with annexations without adequately funding our police department at the same time. And we're making progress with our police department. Slow, steady progress. I don't know if we start annexing lands in the amounts that we have on the horizon, we're going to be able to maintain that ratio, and especially when some of our federal funding is going to be running out soon. Again, I just don't think that some of these proposed findings address the standards, especially as I pointed out, criterion number 7, that you have to demonstrate a lack of significant adverse effects on economic, social, and physical environment of the community by the impact of annexation. I think that text is written in a way where it is asking for a demonstration of compliance with the development that would occur on the land and not with a vacant parcel of land. So I don't know how the rest of the commission feels about it, but yeah, I really can't go there.
Commissioner Roth.
I have 2 questions. One is, have there been public meetings held? No, I know Livesey isn't in the Holcomb Park Place neighborhood. Have there been public meetings held in the Holcomb Park Place neighborhood and with the people on Livesey Road concerning this?
If you're asking me directly, no, there wasn't. When I was chair for a time period, I was going to invite 4 people that were on Livesey within the city to come in and talk, but that didn't happen.
Okay. My other concern is
that was Tom Giles speaking, and he said there were no meetings that he recalls.
Okay. The other concern is, having lived in that neighborhood for 35 years, when you live out there, you know that you're not going to have good water pressure. You know that you may have to replace your septic with a sand filter system. Those are given for living in those neighborhoods. And so I don't find those to be sufficient movement makers for me in looking at something like that. So that's why I would think that the public impact from the people on Livesey and directly around it would be extremely interesting to hear. Because I've dealt with all of those things, not having water for a week. I've dealt with all of it, and it's just the way it is out there.
Commissioner Munn.
I'd like to hear from the police chief on the police issue for annexation of the 6.5 acres.
I don't think this small of an annexation would really impact police services too much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Smith.
Originally with the past annexations, a huge concern of mine was the police department. That's really, one of the main things that I had concerns about. I'm less concerned about that now. I think when we deal with the whole area of Park Place, that'll become another issue. I don't see that so much of an issue tonight with this annexation. And I feel comfortable with most everything else except for what Commissioner Nocita brought up tonight, and that bothers me. So I kind of feel mixed as to what to do. So I don't know if there's more discussion on the options that we have in dealing with that scenario. And I know there has been some already, but...
I'll pose the question to the attorney. If we, in fact, pass on it, you can provide the language that was recommended
Yes,
and come back with it?
Yes, but the problem's going to be the timing. And let me ask the city recorder exactly how much we have.
I have to certify the ballot on September 8th, and that means that on Friday of this week, the notice will be printed in the Oregonian if it's passed tonight, and then there's a 7 business day challenge, and that's the 29th is the deadline, and by that time then it would give me enough time to get it all together to get it to the county by the 8th. If we have another meeting on the 7th of the month, there's not time.
Okay. Here's something to consider, and I'm reading faces rather than, because I know there hasn't been a vote. If you are inclined to go along, either I'll go in the back room tonight and write something in the explanation to deal with this issue. knowing that it's not immune from challenge, and have that ready for you if you want to pass on it tonight. Alternatively, if you want to have a special meeting, either by phone or in person, we can do that. It is a legitimate question that Commissioner Nocita raised, and that happened because our process occurred first. The TPR was then changed and interpreted to apply at different levels where it hadn't before. And our process wasn't brought up to date. Planning at that time wanted to have automatic zone changes upon annexation, and this got caught.
Question, if we were challenged on this,
Yeah.
what would be likely?
Well, there's two things. The possibility, of course, is a challenge to the ballot title. I think you'd probably get by that. Then the issue would be whether or not the annexation resolution or the annexation ordinance could be challenged. And I've got some issues about where that would happen. But one of those could be challenged on the basis of noncompliance with the TPR.
I'm going to pose a question. Can the ballot reflect that zoning will be R5 if the TPR permits?
Yes, you could say that, and I've got some room in the explanation. And there is an ordinance that you adopt after the election, actually, to do the annexation. And what I would do would be to put in the ballot measure itself that this would be the effect. It would be FU10 unless there was justification to convert it to R5.
I think our citizens are pretty smart.
You can't even figure this out tonight.
I can.
Actually, wait a minute. Public comment is closed. This is a discussion.
Yours just all seems so confused, and so citizens.
Settle down. I'm not threatened. I thought you weren't pro or con.
I'm not. I'm just saying they're confused.
Okay.
But does somebody, I'd love to, but I am the chair, does somebody want to try a draft a motion? You can either put a motion to not take it to the voters, or you can draft a motion.
You could also continue it and consider it a different election time, too, and give the applicant an opportunity.
Well, I will make a motion to continue to a next election with a TPR analysis, but I want to let anybody who wants to try to get it passed tonight to try that. That'll be my fallback.
Well, the TPR analysis is something that's borne by the developer, right? Yes. And I mean, if we put that forward, then it's more expense that the developer will have to put forward with the uncertainty as to whether the voters will approve it or not.
That is correct.
So I'll put forth a motion.
Okay, there was a motion.
You would have a motion?
No, I said I would if.
Oh.
If this other one
Okay.
didn't pass.
For us, how would I say this, Ed? With this,
Do you want to help draft a
You
motion?
would direct the city attorney to draft a revised ballot title to reflect the zone change to R5 would only occur if and when a TPR analysis were approved by the city.
that's my motion.
Do I hear a second? I'll second.
Second for discussion.
Well, take Commissioner Smith's second for discussion. I think the concerns and legitimate concerns expressed by Commissioner Nocita have been presented. I don't know if there's any further discussion necessary before we vote, but we can do so. City Attorney is, I don't want to say giving us an out, but I really feel uncomfortable with taking, when we have voter-approved annexation, if there weren't voter-approved annexation, I really wouldn't have that much problem with it. But when we have voter-approved annexation, there's the cost of the election itself and so forth, and that they go through this process, and a process by which they may get city commission approval to put it on the ballot, but they have no knowledge at all whether the voters will approve it, to add that extra cost ahead of time on the process. So that's my opinion.
So really, your choices are to proceed now, of course, to deny is one thing, or to continue to allow the applicant to make the TPR case.
Yes.
Three things.
We've got the one motion before us now.
Yes, that's correct.
It's been seconded. I'll call for the vote.
Commissioner Smith?
Could we get clarity on what a yes and no vote is? And what is a yes vote doing and what is a no vote doing?
Yes is going to construct ballot titles such that the, as I understand it, R5 designation would not be approved until the TPR is...
Analysis were done and approved by the city.
But yes is to move the
Forward.
November.
Yes.
That is
For
correct.
a
That's
November
correct.
election.
That is
Yes.
correct.
Commissioner Smith.
I know.
That was K-N-O-W, wasn't it?
Aye.
Commissioner Nocita?
No.
Commissioner Mum?
Aye.
Commissioner Roth?
No.
Mayor Neely?
Aye.
Motion
Passes 3-2.
3-2.
Now, you're going to be working on some language.
Right now.
Right now.
Go in the back room.
We don't have that many items on the agenda, but we will hang around. For that, I think we come right directly to general business, which we have none, and we have the consent agenda. However, I forgot to do this, and I indicated to Nancy Krushauer I would. I wanted on the consent agenda two things pulled, and I'm sorry I failed to do so. Yeah, and I'll tell you what they are. The consent agenda items are the ones that are dealing with bidded contracts. I think they're the first two items on the consent agenda. I'd like Commissioner Krushauer.
Well, thank you. No, maybe no thank you. No thank you. And you get all the extra pay that we get.
So, if you could go ahead and talk about
I'll get it back to you tomorrow. Okay.
the items on the Main Street 5th and 10th, and the 10th and Main Street, both of those, and I'll be specific as to what my concerns were. These are essentially no-bid contracts, and I just wanted you to share the procedure
Okay.
with no-bid contracts. That was my request.
Yes, okay. These are engineering consultants, which falls under a portion of the statute where you are selecting based on qualifications. And several years ago, rather than select a consultant for every single one of our projects, we find that that becomes very costly, cumbersome, and it takes so much time. What we proposed to you several years ago was that we develop a short list of pre-qualified engineering firms. And we went through a very extensive process, advertising, receiving proposals, and evaluating the proposals for professional services for stormwater management and water resources. That's one category. For transportation planning and engineering, that's one category. Because as you may know, there's some firms specialize or do better things in one or the other. And also we get a wider range of consultants than on our list to choose from. Then there was another category, civil engineering for transportation infrastructure. The last category, other than geotechnical, was utility infrastructure improvements, including design and engineering services for water distribution, stormwater, and wastewater collection systems. And on each of those four lists, we had shortlisted 4 consulting firms that we would be able to pick directly from then, again, based on their qualifications, to do projects as they come up in the budget, et cetera. So both of the Main Street projects, well, this Main Street kind of started as one project. And at that time, we selected Wallace Engineering from this list to start the design on it. And they were working on Main Street itself predominantly. Then we found out we got the bike ped money, and this is kind of a long story, but then we found out we got the ODOT bike ped money for 10th and Main. And so they had already done a bunch of the work on that, so we asked them to complete the design for that. And that contract was actually less than, that's what you see in front of you for the supplemental agreement. And the original design contract for that was actually less than $50,000, so David Frazier approved that. Then the supplemental is for all the construction engineering. And now that it's actually, believe it or not, the design was far less time intensive than the construction will be on this particular project. 10th and Main is really complicated. So we're going to be having 2 full-time inspectors down there, and that contract for that is $62,000, and that's in front of you tonight as a supplemental agreement to the engineering services agreement. Then the other one that you have in front of you is an extension of the design. Actually, the first contract we had for the engineering design for all of Main Street came to the City Commission, I don't remember the date, but that was with Wallace Engineering, and that only covered the design services. And I think that was partially because we were preparing for funding. Remember, there was a bunch of getting prepared so we would be able to accept the flexible funds from ODOT after we received the money from ODOT for kind of the bridge impacts. And so we thought, well, we'll have this thing designed and on the shelf. Should there be another stimulus package? Should we be able to get the flexible federal funding from ODOT or wherever we can find the funding? So we just, you approved that contract for design services. Now we have the money to do the construction. And we are requesting that you approve a second agreement with Wallace Engineering to do the construction engineering. And probably for fairly obvious reasons, it makes sense for them to do the construction engineering. Plus, we've found them to be very, very good on these federal funding projects. They did Warner Milne, which was very complicated. They're also very service-oriented, so on a Main Street project like this where there's a lot of public contact, we believe they're well-suited to that. And quite frankly, we review their scope of work and negotiate it with them and make sure that they're not, that their fees are in line with their services. So that is the story behind these 2 contracts on the agenda tonight. Do you have any other questions?
You say construction engineering. The contractors are doing the construction, operate under them, or is that separate?
I didn't follow.
The actual construction. You're talking about engineering versus construction.
It's construction engineering, which includes the inspection and contract administration.
Okay.
It's kind of one big category under construction engineering. You've got all the inspecting, records keeping. There's a lot of ODOT rules with this stuff, lots of paperwork. And then also, so that's the contract administration.
Okay. And the actual bid outs are separate for the actual
the
firm that does the
construction is
construction.
separate, right?
And that is the competitive bid.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's the engineering and architectural services are in a separate portion of the ORS for public contracting.
Right. Okay. I thought I knew that, but I think this is perhaps new to some of us.
Yeah, and it's kind of like I compare it to, well, sometimes I wish contractors were, and we did with the jug handle, we did do a form of qualifications-based contracting for the jug handle contractor because we felt it was important to make sure they had the kinds of knowledge and experience that we need for such a complex project with that bridge moving and et cetera. And, but what I kind of like to say is with engineers, it's kind of sort of like doctors or lawyers. You want to go to the one that has the most experience in what your needs are, not necessarily who's the cheapest. Because you probably end up paying for it in the long run.
Well, with that, is there any desire to pull A or B out of the consent agenda? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Mum?
Aye.
Commissioner Roth?
Aye.
Mayor Neely?
Aye. Okay. Now we're going to get, I believe, the city manager's report. I don't know
That should be quick.
whose report that is. If the city manager has something to say, if Mr. Archer has something to say, or if Mrs. Kreischauer has anything to say.
No, I would
Well,
like
think
to.
of something, because we're
I
waiting
would
for
like to-
our attorney to come
Well, I
back.
sent my Friday highlights to David today, but what I would like to announce for the public is that next Thursday morning from 9 to 10 a.m. at Caulfield House down on Main Street at 9th and Main, we are going to be having, it's at 8th and Main, we're going to be having a meeting to talk about the Main Street construction, talk about the traffic control, talk about the 10th Street closure, to make sure people really understand what's going on and to have that involvement. So that's at 9 to 10. Everybody's invited. And don't eat breakfast so you can order something to eat there.
When is
They've
this?
got great
When is this?
food. Next Thursday morning from 9 to 10 a.m.
Could I make a suggestion in light of an email we got from a Oregon City citizen this week, that some of this stuff happens in the evenings or weekends? Because
Well,
it's
we-
hard for people that are in Portland and going to be impacted by
Yeah,
this.
well, we had our open house in the evening, which was just about 3 weeks ago now. And this is really trying to be on Main Street where people are directly getting impacted, but also to outreach to anybody who has questions. We also, you can always, they can always contact either myself or Eric Wargren to get, if they want to just have one-on-one information sharing, that's fine too. But this is with the contractor, and it's focusing on the businesses, and that's when they're right before they open.
And this is tomorrow or a week from tomorrow, just for clarification?
A week from tomorrow.
A week
Next,
from
yes,
tomorrow.
that's right.
Okay.
I'm going to be going to Colorado tomorrow, so I will not be there. So,
But you don't recommend we be there tomorrow either?
right, yeah.
Okay, very good. Mr. Archer, have you had a chance to think of anything to talk about?
I've got one announcement I can make. We have our second and last movies in the park this Friday night. The movie is Tangled, and it's at Wesleyland Park at 8:30. We had our first one of those movies in the park a couple of Fridays ago, and I think it went well. And
Yeah, I did too.
saw our mayor there, and so it should be a good time. And we invite all of our community members that are interested to come out.
We have, of course, our second to the last concerts in the park tomorrow, and the last one next week.
That's correct.
Been very successful turnouts this year. Well, they have been in the past, but almost every one of them had
Very much
very,
so, yeah.
very
It's been a
high
great year,
turnout.
yeah. Yes.
Good temperatures.
Yes.
I was
Which-
going to say the temperature.
I don't know if this is the time to bring it up, but I think I will. I'm getting a little pushback on a 100% increase on parking meter costs. And I'd like at one point perhaps to have somebody to come before us. And I'm not suggesting this is a discussion item for now, but I would suggest it for a discussion item subsequent to now. I don't know. You need preparation time, but I haven't given that kind of pushback.
I'm just kind of getting started reading the whole parking study and the methodology they use to come up with those rates. And I know there is some logic behind why they came up with those rates. I don't know if Scott can address that or what, but at some point, let me
Yeah.
get a little bit better.
I think
It might help
I'd
us
like
all
to
to
have that as
review
an
it
agenda item.
before we try to wing it.
We're not doing this parking thing with the McCoy people, are we?
You mean, are we saying certain people cannot compete? I don't know if we want to say that or not, but we want to make sure that whoever's responsible on the city staff has clean pockets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't worry about our parking division. But I do know there was a methodology involved, and there were a lot of people involved in the parking
Right.
study and acknowledging the kinds of cost increases that would be needed to implement the study.
Well, somebody sent me an email with a list of all the cities that have main streets and so forth that don't even have parking meters. And so I feel more comfortable about it if we had that discussion. We can put it on a subsequent agenda item.
I know after reading part of that parking study today, and I've been trying to get through it over the last week, is that it helps create turnover down there. When people are forced to pay a higher rate on there, it creates turnover in those parking spots.
We still have a 2-hour limit. I mean,
Right,
we ticket them if they're there over 2 hours, no matter what.
Well,
Sure, but the extra turnover creates extra revenue for the downtown businesses because there's a
No, I
certain...
understand that.
Okay.
No, I know.
The other really important component, I know we don't want to get into it, this isn't the time, but I think since it's right now in front of us, it would be worth mentioning the Another reason for the price increase being set at what it's at is to a big part of the parking study is to move the long-term parkers out of the core area into the north end or the different areas that we have available. And the rates as they are now don't encourage that behavior at all. In fact, it's cheaper to just keep plugging and moving around than to buy a permit or to find a long-term parking solution. So that's a really big part of this as well, is incentive to keep people from, basically it's the employees, and trying to move those folks out so that the customers can park in the core area. So, but I can review that with Mike. I've been working with that for a while, and we can talk about that if that's an item you want to review at a study session or something.
The other
I have
thing,
another piece of news, if you want.
Go ahead.
There was a lot of discussion about JOBS tonight, jobs, and I just wanted to report to you that we have now processed our third payment to MOAT. It was for $1.7 million. So far, we've paid out, keep in mind this is primarily state money, but it's Jobs and Transportation Act money. So far, we've paid out a little over $4 million, and I would say that that's pretty good for what our community is doing, at least at that particular
We're talking about the
transportation
Jug Handle project.
Yeah, right. And there's a lot of people out there working. So and it will have a good product, I think, in the long run, too. So that's just kind of some good news.
The other thing I want clarification on, well, I wanted to get it on the agenda and be clear, was since we had a unanimous vote for the City Commission to use our contingency funds for an additional $150,000 for the Ermitinger, to have that placed on the next agenda.
I think the vote was for $125,000.
What did I say?
150.
What is it? Oh.
The total would be 250.
Yeah, right, 150, additional 125. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Since we're kind of wasting time. On Sunday, and I don't know who to address this to, but I was outside, and there was a meter reader that came on Sunday afternoon and read my water meter. Is that kind of normal that they would do that? Is that like a kind of an overtime kind of thing, or?
We have a contract with a water meter reading service.
Oh.
To tell you the truth, I don't know what the hours are of the contractor that does the water meter reading.
I just found that very fascinating that he came Sunday afternoon. Okay.
Are we doing commissioner comments, or are we just...
We can talk about anything now.
Whatever you want.
Anything. Okay.
Well,
Here it comes, then. Well, I just wanted to make a couple comments. I was out of town. I was in California for 2 weeks at a conference. Well, I shouldn't say conference. It was a fellowship that I was awarded from an application through the school district. It was a 2-week intensive focusing on the work of Gandhi and Chavez, and focusing on teaching nonviolence. And they selected 40 educators from across the United States, one of which was myself. And so was a lot of work involved in it, but I found that a lot of the we had speakers every day, lectures every day. We're working on curriculum for our own classrooms, but the topics included a wide range of different things that were as equally applicable to the city as they were to the school district. And in fact, actually, the day of the farmers market national kickoff here in Oregon City, we were actually talking to the director of the Farm to School program, National Farm to School program, at our conference. So was able to talk to her a little bit about what we were doing in Oregon City with the farmers market. So it definitely became it was definitely an experience that was applicable to both both fields of the city and the school district. I watched the last meeting, all the meetings that I've missed, I watched, and wanted to also, I was kind of, in watching the meeting, was disappointed that I wasn't here for the presentation on the attendance court, and but thankfully I've been able to talk to I've talked to the chief a little bit about it. I talked to Lorraine McNeese about it, and I actually talked to Bill Stewart about it. Lorraine McNeese and Bill have both been involved with the Oregon City Together group that has been meeting, and so I kind of got to chat with them on that. And being a school teacher at the high school, I think it's incredible. I was just thinking it might be a great idea. I was watching when Larry Didway, our new superintendent, was talking about his first thoughts on whether or not this was a little too much, and then showing the numbers on how it applied. But I thought, man, if we just show that little bit right there at the beginning of that video of the city commission meeting to the students, like the first day, they won't know what hit them.
Yeah.
I mean, I was blown away by it, and I was kind of like in the same expression, going, "Oh my gosh!" I mean, but it is a huge problem at the high school, a problem that we have not been able to deal with in a realistic way in the last couple of years, and so I'm very excited. I think that goes just on the pile of things to be excited of the things that the police department's involved in. So I'm really excited about it, and I think it will apply. I think it'll help a lot. And I apologize to all. Man, I missed so many great events that I love to go to. I was kind of missing being at the National Night Out and the First City Festival and such and such and such. There were so many things. So I apologize for not being there for that, but I promised what I was doing was as valuable. And so I'll bring that back to the city.
I should have given the city. I should have given the mayor's report, so I'm going to go to the mayor's report.
Yeah, go.
I've had the meeting with the Historic Review Board, and everybody agreed on the appointment of Robert Seward. Every single member of the Historic Review Board that was there, I was impressed by his presentation, as was the staff person. So he'll be serving from today till December 31st, 2013. He represents the Kenema neighborhood.
Nice.
And now we've got, we still have one vacancy open on the Budget Committee, one for the Oregon City Civic Improvement Trust Board, one for the Metro Enhancement Committee. The Natural Resource Committee, we do have the 4 applicants. We will be, Commission President Nacita, myself, and Peter Walter will be interviewing the 4 interviewees. There's total 7 positions altogether. And if in fact we get these 4 people, in fact, agree to appointments, that committee will then be activated. And go ahead, Commissioner Moe.
Nope, I'm wrong.
That's
I know we dressed the same, but
Yeah, we did. We got the memo.
Yeah, they're kind of blue.
I just wanted to report on Concordia. They are now in the active stage of dealing with Clackamas on reaching their articulation agreement. So that has moved forward great, and they've also met with the Oregon City School District in getting a space. So they've got narrowed down to 2 spaces, and looks like that's for the Fab Lab is going to move forward.
Yeah, very good.
Great.
Any other commission comments?
Just
Commissioner Roth.
One report. The fundraiser for the Rose Farm, the Oklahoma.
Thank you, Betty.
Commissioner Smith was the kind of the MC, I guess, for the evening. Was very well attended. I don't know if they made any money, but it was a very good attendance for the first go-around, and it was very a great performance.
What did
Yeah, it
you
was.
think?
We haven't had our meeting to follow up on that, but it was.
Great idea.
Yeah, it was really great. So I appreciate you being there, and Nancy as well. It was fun.
It's a great idea.
Even though I wasn't there, I
It
bought 2
was.
tickets
Just
for it.
fabulous.
I went to the opening one, and,
Yes.
and I gave as an auction item at the chamber the 2 tickets to somebody else. But is there one more show?
I think there is this Saturday, I think. Isn't
Yeah,
there?
anybody that hasn't seen Oklahoma is very
It's
well
very
done.
good.
Any other commissioner comments?
Nope, that's all.
If not, our city attorney's coming back with some wording on our motion.
All right, there's 2 things. There's the resolution of the City Commission, which is a Resolution 1117, and what I'll do is, if you call it up on your screens, I'll give you the proposed changes for it.
Okay.
All right, I'm looking at,
Hold on one second.
sorry.
So where are we on our screen?
And it's Exhibit
Resolution 1117.
It's A.
Okay, very good.
Exhibit A.
Scroll down on the first page, if you would, until you get to the now therefore.
Yep.
Okay. I would insert a paragraph between the last whereas and the now therefore, which will read as follows. Whereas, and I'll give this all to the city recorder, the City Commission desires to defer the question of compliance with the Oregon Transportation Planning Rule until the decision of approval of this annexation is made by the voters of the city, semicolon. Okay, so that directly deals with the one issue that was raised. And then if you look at the end of the second page, the last paragraph currently on that page is if the legal voters, see that? I would add another paragraph after that to read as follows. If the legal voters of Oregon City approve this annexation, comma, and I started that out, I'm sorry, notwithstanding City Code Section 17.68.025, comma, if the legal voters of Oregon City approve the annexation, the Commission shall not rezone the subject site until it approves a report showing compliance with the Oregon Transportation Planning Rule, comma, OAR 660, Division 12. Okay? Now, the tougher thing was changing the ballot title, so that's also on the third page, I think, of that exhibit, because you've approved, I'm sorry, yeah, it's the measure number. You see that it's on the second page, I guess. It was with a caption, a question, and a summary. Caption doesn't change. The question will slightly be revised, and bear in mind what I had to deal with is there's a 10-word limitation on the caption, which doesn't change. There's a 20-word limitation on the question, and there's a 150-word limitation on the explanation. So the question will now read, shall 6.5 acres in northeast of the city be annexed into the Oregon City limits while deferring rezoning? I wanted to make it clear that the voters would deal with that issue and that the rezoning would be deferred. Now, if you go down to the summary of the measure, go on the first paragraph after the word one tax lot on the second line of the summary. Everybody got that? Mm-hmm. Okay. I would move up, I would put I.E. Clackamas County map 22E 28D tax lot 180. I'm saving some words there. So I'm moving that up, that description, putting a comma there, setting it off by commas. In the next paragraph, on the second line, it says the property is currently vacant. I'm not sure that makes any difference. I would say the property is within the city's urban, or UGB and that is on the last line of the current stuff. Zoned county FU10 and et cetera. I would put a period after the word comprehensive plan on the fourth line and add a new sentence. No rezoning to a more intensive use shall be allowed without compliance with applicable transportation rules. So the voters have it right in front of them.
Right.
That's the last paragraph would be unchanged.
Okay.
All right, and the theory for this is that there's a two-step process, and that is the vote and then the actual ordinance adopting the annexation and then adopting the rezoning. What you're doing is putting it into a multi-step process. So if you want to proceed, that's the best way to proceed.
Thank you.
I'm just going to informally poll, is there anybody, based on this, that would change their vote on the previous motion?
I would.
Okay? Can we, how do we, can we just reintroduce the motion as it was?
Yes, you can say as read by the city attorney. You don't need to have me read it again.
Okay.
Motion as read by the city attorney.
That would be to approve the resolution as amended.
Yeah.
And second?
Do I
Yeah.
second myself? No.
You made the motion?
I made the motion.
You made the second?
Okay.
That was
The
it's
blue-
Commissioner Mum on my left and Commissioner Roth on my right. Can we poll the commission, please?
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nocita?
No.
Commissioner Mum?
Aye.
Commissioner Roth?
Aye.
Mayor Neely?
Aye. So, vote for annexation, ballot title has been approved by a 4-1 vote. And with that, go wherever you wish to go.
Woohoo, me.
Oh, yes, excuse me. We have an executive.